The night before an episode is due, here you are wondering, what am I supposed to talk about today? And here you are rambling. At the end of the day, there's just nothing cohesive about the episode that you've put out. I used to think podcasting was super easy. That is, until I started my own podcast 5 years ago. And then I realized that while podcasting is simple, there are things about it that aren't easy. And very quickly, I started to fall into some common traps that many podcasters fall into. There are mistakes that you need to avoid in order to be successful as a podcaster. Here's the deal. Podcasting has become table stakes. You need one. If you're a business owner, if you're building a personal brand, you need a podcast. Whether you're looking to build a deeper connection with your community, whether you're looking to use this as a part of your marketing engine and you're expecting to get leads from your podcast, it is a necessity in this internet world of ours. However, it is a known fact that most podcasts don't make it past their first episode, much less their 8th episode. Of the over 4 million episodes in existence today, as of 2023, only 700,000 of them are actually actively producing episodes. And some of them are producing episodes inconsistently at that. And that inconsistency leads to a phenomenon that we call pod fade, where your podcast slowly fades away as you produce episodes less and less frequently. I don't want that for you. I want you to be successful at your podcast simply because, as I said, it is a necessity in our world today. If you're trying to build an online footprint, podcasting is an easy win. Incorporating a podcast into your content strategy helps you start with long form content and gives you content for days on other platforms like Instagram, TikTok. So to be clear, I don't want your podcast to fail. I want to make sure that you can be successful and sustain that success in the long run, which is why I'm sharing some of these pitfalls and mistakes that you need to avoid. If you're new here, hi there. My name is Sewa Ajay-Pele, and I host the She's Off Script podcast, where we help you create your own unique blueprint for business success. Before we dive into the episode, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone else who could use it. With that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first podcasting mistake people make, especially since podcasting is a simple medium to get into, is they expect their shows to be an overnight success. And even if they don't expect an overnight success, they're still expecting some sort of traction, some sort of notoriety from their podcast pretty quickly. And I will tell you that if you're a gardener like I am, I love to use this analogy when I explain the growth that podcasters typically see, is that in the first year, you plant an evergreen plant. So this is a plant that's going to be growing all season long. The first time you plant it, in that first year, you can expect it to creep, meaning that it's still alive. There's still probably some movement within the plant, but outwardly, you don't see anything. You don't see any growth. You don't see any flowers, nothing. And you start to worry. Is this thing on? Is this thing working? The second year, that is when you see the plant start to creep. By creep, I mean you see a little bit of growth. You see more of an outward sign of life. The third year, that is when your plant leaps, meaning that out of nowhere, this thing doubles and triples in size. You're seeing green leaves and flowers all over the place. So I liken that analogy about plants to podcasting. The first year of podcasting, you are still in growth and learning mode. There is a little bit of a steep learning curve because especially if it's new to you and you have no audience, you're not used to content creation, you have quite a bit to learn. You're still getting comfortable in your skin as a podcaster. So after that first year, once you've ironed out all the logistics and the kinks and you can do it with your eyes closed, then you can start to focus on the kinds of activities that will help your podcast start to grow. That first year is your foundational year. And I don't want you to make the mistake of quitting too soon because that foundational year, you're not seeing any growth. You're not seeing the instant gratification that unfortunately our world today, where we have AI at our fingertips, has led us to believe we should get instantaneous results. But with something like podcasting, you need to lay the foundation. You need to water, you need to fertilize before your podcast is going to explode. For some of us, it might be 3 years. For others, you may be able to go through that cycle fairly quickly, but I would encourage you to allow yourself to go through all of those cycles. Don't feel the need to quit too soon when you're not seeing the immediate results, because that would be a major mistake. Just the effort in getting started alone is commendable. You are doing something that a whole lot of podcasters never get off the ground. You're doing something that a whole lot of podcasters never do, which is go from idea to actually launching it. So after going through that effort, please do not quit too soon, but also don't expect to see results too soon either. That's mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 is there's a misalignment between your goals and the actions you're taking. Let me explain. So when you're first starting on any journey, you need to know why. You need to know what your motivations are for taking that action. So when you're starting a podcast, is it because this is a hobby? This is something that you think would be super cool to do in your spare time? Is this something that is a part of your personal brand building journey? Or is this a part of your business? Is this an arm of your marketing engine? And this is something that you are expecting to bring in new leads and sales for your business. You need to know why you are starting this podcast, because if you don't have clear goals and motives in mind, you're not going to know what actions you need to take in order to accomplish those goals. If this is a hobby, it's understandable that you're not producing episodes on a consistent basis. It's understandable that you're not constantly innovating and improving. It's understandable that you may not start with the best equipment, or even if you don't start with the best equipment, it's understandable that you're not looking to upgrade. It's a hobby. You're doing it just for fun. Versus if you are trying to build a community or a personal brand using this podcast, you're going to be consistent. You're going to be thoughtful about the messaging that you're putting out on your podcast. You're going to be consistent about how you deliver, because your goal is to build your personal brand. Your goal is to connect with the people on the other side of the microphone. Your goal isn't just to shoot the breeze. If this is a part of your marketing strategy as a business owner, you're going to be consistent. You're going to be thoughtful about what you're promoting each and every episode. You're going to be thoughtful about delivering value on your podcast episode so that people not only get value from them, but they're excited to share, which in turn will help you grow and also get you more exposure as a business owner. And as a result of that, your actions are going to reflect things that need to happen in order for you to reach your goals. If you're a business owner, chances are you are generating revenue, and this podcast is going to be an investment for you. So even if it's not bearing fruit early on, you understand that in the long run, it's really going to pay off. So your approach to it is going to be different. So I would challenge you to know why you are starting a podcast. Get clear on what your goals are and what the actions are that you are going to need to take in order to reach the goals that you're hoping this podcast will help you attain. Don't be out there flailing in the wind, not sure what you're doing, why you're doing, because at the end of the day, you're going to get frustrated by your lack of results. And if you haven't defined what success looks like for you as a podcaster, if you don't have any goals in mind when you get this started, you will find that you won't be motivated to go the distance with podcasting. So that's mistake number 2, is when your goals and the actions you're taking are misaligned. Unfortunately, you're not going to have a successful podcast. This is actually one of the very first things I work with my students on in my course, the Off Script Podcast Lab. I help them identify why they're starting a podcast and then help them map out all the actions they need to take in order to meet their goals as a podcaster, from equipment that they need to take, from identifying their ideal listeners so that they're creating content for them, everything in between. So if you're interested in starting a podcast or restarting your podcast the right way without making any of these mistakes, take a look at the link in the description box or in the show notes to join the waitlist. Our first round of students are now completing the course, so you can join my waitlist to hear when the doors are open for my next round of students. And I'll see you on the inside of the Off Script Podcast Lab. Mistake number 3 is that you don't have any systems or processes in place. The problem with this is it makes podcasting feel more difficult than it really is. It makes podcasting feel more stressful than it should be. And if you don't have any systems or processes in place, it makes it difficult for other people to step in and help you. Podcasting is a multi-step process. It's more than just hitting record and being done. There's so much you need to do before and after you hit record. Things like doing your keyword research, things like researching content that's currently trending if that's something that's required in your space, educating yourself on the different topics that you need to share. And after you hit record, there's editing, there's marketing, there's continuous promotion of your show. In order to do all of these steps successfully, you will need to be organized. You will need a system and a process in place that allows this to be a repeatable, templated process. And in the long run, if you're organized, then you know what pieces of your process to farm out or hire out to other people. But it all starts with having a system and process in place that is repeatable, and that is something that you learn to do with your eyes closed. If you don't have any of this in place, quite frankly, it's going to be a situation where the day before you're supposed to post an episode, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have an episode due tomorrow. What am I going to post about? What am I going to record? And then you start to ramble, and then you start to say things that make absolutely no sense. And then at the end of the day, are you being valuable to your audience? You're not, because you haven't taken the time to truly research your subject matter. You haven't taken the time to understand, is this something that's going to be helpful to them? So there's a difference between posting just to post because you know you need to post something, and posting content that actually has a purpose, that actually is helping you achieve your goals and is serving your audience because they are out there looking for a solution to their problem, or you are helping them fill a need, whether you're entertaining them, whether you're their go-to person for gardening advice, whatever it may be. Are you serving your purpose by putting out that episode? Or are you simply so unorganized that here you are the night before an episode is due, rushing and burning the midnight oil just to get something, anything out? That can't be the purpose for your podcast. You got to do better. And the way you start doing better is by having systems and processes in place. So my hope for you is that you don't make this mistake. And very early on, I need you to start documenting your process and practice doing things the same way over and over every single time until you know that you have a system in place that is working for you. And then after that, you can, of course, refine it and improve it as you learn about new technology or new processes that are cutting down time. Absolutely substitute those. But to start with, you need some sort of a process and system in place. Mistake number 4 is you don't know who your podcast is for. So not only don't you know why you're podcasting and you don't have goals, but you don't know who you're creating this show for, which means you are just creating random episodes that either don't have anything to do with each other or don't have a solid outcome that has someone in mind. As a podcaster, you should know who your ideal listener is. And that's one of the things that I work with my students on, is creating their ideal listener profile so that when they create a show, they have that individual in mind and they know that whatever they are creating is going to be a solution for that individual, whether it's someone who suffers from depression and they need a daily dose of joy, and your comedy podcast is exactly what they look for to every single week within the podcast because you understand who your ideal listener is. You make light of depression a little bit because you know what it is that they're going through, right? You're speaking directly to the needs of the individuals on the other side of the mic. You're not just creating random content because you think it's cool. What that leads to is your show can't grow because think about how you look for content online or on YouTube. You probably go on YouTube and search for how do I hammer a nail? And a lot of videos will come up where someone says, this is a nail, this is a hammer, this is how you tap it into a piece of wood, right? So you not only have a problem as a consumer of content, you go and you search for specific content that has the answer you're looking for. So think about your podcast similarly. Know who is on the other side of that search bar. What are they going to be looking for as someone who listens to your podcast? And are your episodes speaking to them? Now, I know a lot of you want to have creative freedom. You want to be able to talk about whatever it is on your mind that day. And absolutely, you should be able to do that. But it has to be content that's related to the individuals that you are serving. Please don't start a podcast just because you want to shoot the breeze and you have no individual listener in mind or no group of listeners in mind. Because at the end of the day, if I can't tell that your show was meant for me, and the way I'm going to be able to tell if the show's meant for me is perhaps the graphics you use, the colors you use, the fonts you use, the words you use, the titles that you're using speak to me as someone who is meant to be in the audience of your podcast. If you don't have that in mind, you're not going to be mindful when you are creating your artwork, when you are titling your episodes. The things you do are not going to resonate with anyone. And all that's going to lead to is you being frustrated because things aren't hitting, things aren't resonating. Your podcast is not growing. And the problem is you have made a fundamental mistake in the way you started out, is you didn't know who you were making the show for. And as a result, it's not resonating and it's not popping up in front of the right people, especially if you're sharing your show on an algorithm-based show. The algorithm needs to be able to match up your show with other people who are listening to similar content. So take a step back before you jump in to record your episode. Have you taken the time to identify who your ideal listener is? It's a simple step, but it's so vital to the success of your show. It's so vital that you know this is who I'm creating my show for, and you know that everything you create is going to serve them. So don't make this mistake. Take the time to create your ideal listener profile before you jump in. All right. So mistake number 5 is your show does not have a clear topic or focus area. You want to come on there and talk about random things and ramble on and on about whatever is on your mind for that day, because I understand you want to have creative license. You are a creative person. You want to have the freedom to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about for the day, but you need to have some sort of a focus because, as I mentioned before, the people who are in your audience likely are seeking you out for something specific. What is that specific thing that they're going to be searching for when they land on your show? Make sure that that variety of topics that are relevant to your ideal listener are represented in your portfolio of episodes. If this isn't the case, nobody is going to find you. If your episodes aren't search engine optimized, meaning that you don't have the keywords within your show notes, within the title of your episodes that are relevant to the people who are going to be searching for the solution that you have to offer, you once again will be frustrated because nobody is going to find your show because you don't have a specific topic. You've covered 50 different things within the course of a 30-minute episode, and it's even difficult for you to title the episode because you don't know what it was truly about. So no one is searching for rambling episode that talked about the weather, sports, and flowers, right? That has so many different topics that really aren't about anything. So you need to be able to categorize your show. I know some of you may not want to be boxed boxed in. But rather than boxing you in, having a focus is going to give you the freedom. You're not going to be paralyzed by the plethora of things that are out there in the world to talk about. The opposite is actually going to be true for you. You're going to be free to pick so many topics within a specific arena, right? So think about this using the hub and the spoke analogy. When you look at a wheel, like an old school wagon wheel or even a bicycle wheel, there's a hub in the center, and that's going to be the core focus of your show. And then there are going to be spokes that come off of that hub. And these different spokes are all the different topics that you can cover that also are relevant to that focus area, that also are relevant to your ideal listener that sits at the center of the wheel. We are fully formed people. We all have a lot of different interests, but unfortunately, when it comes to podcasts or creating content in general, you can't possibly cover everything. You need to pick a certain focus area and cover everything between your two focus areas. So what is it going to be for you? Don't make the mistake of being for everyone and being someone who talks about everything, because at the end of the day, you will confuse people. People won't know that the show is for them, and you will get frustrated because why aren't people engaging? They're not engaging because you talk about so much that they don't know that that little gem and nugget that you shared within the episode that was buried so deep in just minutia of rambling was for them. So don't make that mistake. Be clear about what your focus area is. What is the topic? What is the title of your show? Make sure that you optimize it for the listener that you want to find it, whether it's the way you name your show, choose your episode titles, pick topics that you're going to be covering within the segments of your show. Whatever it is, be strategic, be aware of who you're creating it for, and know what it is you're talking about. So at the end of the day, you make the work easier for yourself. You don't find yourself in a situation where the night before an episode is due, here you are wondering, what am I supposed to talk about today? And here you are rambling. At the end of the day, there's just nothing cohesive about the episode that you've put out. And do that enough times, you will get so frustrated that you start to pod fade. And remember, I want you to be successful as a podcaster. So make sure that you don't make any of these mistakes. Let me know in the comments, do any of these common mistakes resonate with you as someone who would love to podcast, someone who has attempted to podcast before? Have you made any of these mistakes? Let me know in the comments. And if you're finally ready to start a podcast or restart your podcast in the right way, don't forget to check out the link in the description box or in the show notes to join the waitlist for my podcasting course, so you will know exactly when the doors are open for you to join. Within the course of 30 days, you can have a successful show up and running. If you enjoyed this episode of the She's Off Script podcast, I want you to know I have solo episodes like this one and over 190 episodes with guests where I interview them on their journey to creating their own blueprint for business success as they are building their businesses. You can find our audio episodes on she'soffscript.com or anywhere else audio podcasts are available, and our archive of video podcast episodes are available on YouTube. With that, we'll see you right back here next week for another episode of the She's Off Script podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you found the episode helpful. Bye.